King of the Hill is king of the reboots. Oh yeah, my fellow Propaniacs, after 15 long years away, we are finally returning to Arlen, Texas for more misadventures with the Hills. There's been a lot of speculation and hype surrounding the King of the Hill revival, especially after it was announced that it would be featuring a time skip to bring the story and characters into the modern day. This immediately set the series apart from its many adult animation contemporaries, like The Simpsons, Family Guy, or South Park, who have traditionally maintained a floating timeline to keep their characters perpetually frozen in time at the same age, with only the references and technology around them evolving. But this left many lingering questions in the lead up to the series' return. What is an adult Bobby like? Is Hank still in love with Sweet Lady Propane and her various accessories? Just how will an older cast of King of the Hill work in 2025? To many fans, myself included, the answer is shockingly well. As The Hollywood Reporter, Vulture, and the great Johnny Tuccellos have already proclaimed, I'm beyond happy to say that King of the Hill Season 14 is not only good, it may be the greatest television revival we've ever seen.
Oh yeah!
Before we dive in too much further, I do want to give a quick spoiler warning, as we will be discussing some light details regarding the new episodes. So if you haven't watched them yet and would like to go in as blind as possible, now is your chance to pause this video and come back after you're caught up.
Near bear run now, man. Oh, man.
As we already mentioned, the revival opted to bring the show into the modern day by aging its cast of characters up by 8 years, which we brilliantly see summarized in the show's opening credits. Not only did this choice make for a unique and interesting hook, but it also immediately and drastically establishes a new status quo to set itself apart from the old series. Furthermore, the real genius of this revival comes in the additional plot point of Hank and Peggy having spent a large chunk of that time in Saudi Arabia, or as Peggy would say,
Saudi Arabia.
Like most fans, this detail felt a little random when it was first revealed, but in the context of the show, the intention of this specific choice really shines through. Not only does their return to Arlen serve as an ideal catalyst for the show's return, but it also provides a perfect narrative device for Hank and Peggy to experience the modern changes around them in a more authentic way. By essentially freezing them in time in a sort of idealistic version of America at the base in Saudi Arabia, it allows for an organic and entertaining culture shock for their return. Rather than we, the viewers, catching up with the Hills are actually catching up with us. Whether it's something as simple as traffic markers preventing Hank from turning into the alley, or larger socio-political differences in how people act, it was the perfect way to bring the series back in a meaningful and impactful way. However, the writers don't lose sight of who Hank is as a character and what made him such a perfect vehicle for exploring these sorts of topics. This is best exemplified in scenes like the one towards the end of episode 1, where we see Hank interacting with the local Girl Scout troop selling cookies outside the Megalomart. Though Hank initially scoffs at the idea of modern differences like gluten-free cookies, he also takes an important moment of reflection when reconciling with the idea of good change as well, exemplified moments later in something like no longer calling coconut caramel cookies Samoas. In today's political climate, one might expect a conservative man like Hank to bemoan this woke update to his favorite cookie, but instead it serves as a turning point for Hank and Peggy's attitude towards the new America they found themselves in. As the young scout so succinctly puts it, it's nice to be nice. Beyond just the differences in modern culture, what also really worked about this new premise and the idea of aging everyone up is that it allows for entirely new dynamics for the characters to operate in as well. While the original series attempted to change things up where they could, for the most part, every character in the show existed in roughly the same narrative bubble they found themselves in throughout all 13 seasons. Hank worked at Strickland Propane, Peggy was a substitute teacher, among other part-time professions, Bobby was in middle school, and these side characters had their various roles in life as well. There were obviously variations for episodes here and there, but for the most part, things didn't change. It's part of what I think has made it so hard for something like The Simpsons to stay fresh after all these years. There are only so many stories to tell about characters who must revert back to the same default status episode after episode, season after season. And if this were a traditional reboot, it's likely we would have merely returned to that status quo here as well. But instead, we get not only a fresh modern setting, but a fresh slate for these characters to play in and explore. Hank and Peggy are now retired and looking for new meaning and fulfillment in their lives. Bobby is now an adult himself and navigating the trials and tribulations of running his own restaurant. Every single character in the series is in a drastically different place than where we left them 15 years ago, and the show is better for it. Where the season truly excels, though, is in its writing. Despite how different the scenario is, the humor and characterizations in this revival feel so authentic to the original series. While the first episode is a bit more weighed down with the task of setting the stage and is easily the weakest of the batch, once the legwork is out of the way, the series finds its stride magnificently. There are so many moments to be found in these 10 episodes that are sure to have longtime fans bursting with laughter. Peggy shouting, "You just got pegged," with zero awareness of what she is saying was an instant classic. It's clear that no matter the age, the writers know exactly who these characters are and what makes them tick, or more importantly, what makes them funny. Whether it's Hank's simplistic and wholesome sincerity, Peggy's overconfident ineptitude, or Bobby's curiosity and creativity, the heart and soul of these characters remains wonderfully intact. It's also profoundly satisfying to see Hank and Bobby having clearly progressed in their relationship together, but also still finding areas of growth to work towards all these years later. This new reality of their dynamic provides fresh context for stories as well, most notably in my favorite episode of the season, Any Given Hill Day. After Bobby witnesses his favorite customer die at his restaurant, the incident gives Bobby a newfound perspective on his father, who is roughly the same age. It's a significant update that sets a revival apart from the original series, and adds a new layer to the father-son dynamic as these characters enter a new phase of life. The new scenarios they find themselves in offer exciting opportunities, but the core of the writing feels just as true to who these characters are as it did 15 years ago. And that's where the revival rises above its peers. With reboots like Futurama or Beavis and Butthead, it seemed like there were ingredients missing that made the originals work. Whether it's simply the writing trying too hard to modernize the show or retread old territory, something felt slightly off. You might get an episode or two in any given run that feels reminiscent of the old days, but they tend to be few and far between. Season 14 of King of the Hill, on the other hand, feels like the show never skipped a beat. In fact, I'd go as far as to say these 10 episodes were stronger than most of the show's later entries back during the original run. That's not to say the revival is without its flaws or that every joke is a winner. Some of the modern references or callbacks were a little heavy-handed at times, but the good definitely outweighs the bad here. What's more, the show feels like it has something to say and a purpose in returning beyond just nostalgia. It's clear the creators put a lot of time and care into crafting this revival in a way that is not only well executed, but meaningful. More so than anything, I believe this new season leaves the door wide open for a variety of new and exciting opportunities moving forward. Bobby's restaurant and budding relationship with Connie in particular feel inspired and ripe with possibility. I was admittedly skeptical of the idea of Bobby and Connie getting back together all these years later, but to the writers' credit, they do an excellent job of building that chemistry in a surprisingly natural way over the course of the season. From little moments early on showing their reunion and playful dynamic to nostalgic callbacks, and ultimately the promise of the final episode showing that it's a relationship built on who they have become as adults rather than who they were as children. Hank and Peggy's new status quo as retirees looking for new hobbies to fill their time likewise provides unlimited angles for future episodes, like we saw in The Beer Story, New Ref in Town, and Chore Money, Chore Problems. This classic formula was rare for Hank in the original series, with standout episodes like A Firefighting We Go and Little Horrors of Shop, but now is a mainstay for the character. Not only that, but there are still a wealth of side characters we have yet to scratch the surface on as well. John Redcorn and Joseph in particular felt woefully underutilized this season, and while Jonathan Joss's tragic murder is sure to reshape the character's role moving forward, I'm hoping he was able to record at least one John Redcorn-centric episode before his death. But we'll have to wait until the second batch of episodes drop next year to find out. Likewise, noticeably absent from this batch of episodes were Luann and Lucky. Most assumed the characters would be written out in some fashion due to the passing of Brittany Murphy and Tom Petty, but surprisingly, they have yet to even be mentioned in the revival. While it's unlikely that the couple will return on screen, many fans have long speculated that their daughter Gracie could see a return in this new timeline as a connective thread similar to Good Hank. The inclusion of Hank's half-brother, Good Hank, was the perfect narrative tool to further explore the complicated relationship with their late father Cotton. Getting to see the two brothers find common ground was certainly what made No Hank Left Behind one of the highlights of this season. And at its core, the series has always been about generational divide and how characters of varying ages can reconcile their differences. This new series continued that trend with the divide between Hank and Bobby, but a more lasting presence of a younger character like Gracie or Good Hank moving forward could be a missing ingredient that makes the revival really come into its own. Furthermore, one of the things that always made King of the Hill work so well is its diverse and eclectic ensemble cast, and it feels like we've barely scratched the surface with these 10 episodes. Needless to say, it will be incredibly fun to continue catching up with all our favorite side characters as the show continues. For example, Peggy's fade out and conscious uncoupling were excellent implementations of that classic formula, and it'd be great to see more side character focused episodes like them in the future. Not only that, but the 8-year gap in the timeline leaves an amazing wealth of storytelling opportunities ahead as well. While we know the general broad strokes of where the characters were during this period, there are also plenty of narrative possibilities that could easily be explored in future episodes. What exactly drove Hank to leave Strickland and move to Saudi Arabia? What was Bobby in high school like? Who is that mysterious woman Boomhauer is with? What other mysteries played out in those years since we last saw our favorite characters? Hopefully time and many more seasons will tell. All this to say, the King of the Hill revival feels like a love letter to fans that celebrates its past while crafting an exciting and promising future ahead. What else is there to say but it's good to be back in Arlen, y'all. I tell you what.